Hey witches, it's Lee and this is Do the Magical Thing, and I want to introduce you to a new series which is Say the Magical Thing. Yes, I am sticking with the tried and tested formula, but Say the Magical Thing is going to be an opportunity for us to look at magic words. And even that term, magic words, is quite interesting, isn't it? You know, I think of it when a caregiver would, you'd be asking a caregiver for something and they would say to you, what's the magic word? And you'd be like, oh, please, or whatever. But the reality is, by saying that magic word, it then got you something that you wanted. Is that manifestation? So, yeah. And I know manifestation is one of those words that can be a little bit tricky in terms of like privilege and things like that. But in a purely magical context, saying something and receiving something, that's really, a interesting way of observing magic words. So, we're going to look in depth at a few different terms. And it's really going to go from common ones to less common ones, perhaps some rare terms that you might not have heard of before. But really I want to make sure that we're all on the same page, because so often we can say things, these throwaway lines, or we read stuff in books, and that moment where you read something in a book and you go, what is that word? And you think, I haven't got time to look this up right now, I'm going to have to just keep going and kind of guess what this means in terms of the context. I don't want you to have to do that. I want things to be really clear. And, the clearer we are, the more specific we can get in our spell work, right? And therefore, the more specific our results can be. So, this is really a chance for us to look at these magic words and apply them more effectively. And I'm going to do this in 10 minutes or less because I really want you folks to have the opportunity to refresh yourself perhaps, or learn a new one and then apply it, then get back to doing the magical thing, or indeed saying it, right? So this is what we're going to try and do. We're going to start off with a word that is, something that a lot of us may have heard, but the origins of it are kind of complex. So that will be our magic word that we're dealing with today, which I shall reveal to you very soon. Before that, a massive thank you to Paintbox Soapworks. They've been a subscriber for some time, and I really, really thoroughly appreciate your kind donation to the channel. It's meant that I could get a mic stand. I can't tell you how excited I am about this mic stand. And I know it sounds geeky, but this is magical to me because I have to, normally when I'm recording, have like a table in front. I need to have I'm going to show you, right, this DIY makeshift soundproofing and everything, but this mic stand has meant that I don't need that anymore, and it still sounds good, and it's movable, and I can, when we're doing our magical thing moments, when we're looking at the table, it's going to be far more easier to be able to have that kind of hold on it all. So I'm just, I can't tell you how much it means. The mic stand that I got is quite a sturdy one, but the rest of your donation, because as I say, Paintbox Soapworks were very generous, is going towards an LED light. I've got currently a bulb one which is flickering on occasion, and it's on its way out, and an LED one would be able to be at different brightnesses and different angles than this one can. It's not got the flexibility. But also it's going to be more energy efficient and hopefully quite long lasting. So if anyone feels like they want to join Paintbox Soapworks, and also Zoe, who very kindly donated before as well, there is a PayPal link in the description box. It's my birthday week coming up at the beginning of April, so feel free to drop it in there as a little bit of solar rotation celebration donation. I don't know how many more Asians can I come up with, but yeah, if you feel you can. But I obviously know that money can be tight, so this is, completely optional, and I massively appreciate likes, shares, subscribes. Just, click those buttons, please, because it massively makes a difference. We're really close to 1,000, really close. So, we're getting there, folks. Anyway, let's get to magical things. Paintbox Soapworks, by the way, on Instagram, do check them out, and they've got amazing stuff as well on there. They create these really, really cool soaps. So yes, magic words, as well as thank you. Now, because we're getting familiar with magic words, I brought out my little familiar, and for those who know that my magic nickname is Grand Toad, or the Grand Toad, I thought it couldn't be anyone but this little toad chap here. So yes, here we go. Our magic word at this time round is abracadabra. Now, abracadabra is it's a term you've probably heard before, if nothing else, in stage magic, and it's an incantation or an exclamation. We'll be using it more in the incantation sense. Now, abracadabra has quite a contested origin story. Now, what is the origin? Well, the reality is, we're not sure. It might be Abraxas, right? So it might be Greek. It might come from this term, which essentially represented a being that was a creationary being, someone who built things, universes, the whole kind of shebang, the material kind of universe. It's interesting to note that there's 7 letters here, and that this may have represented the 7 planets and their influence, which obviously was quite a key thought within philosophy and cosmology. The planetary rulers, we see this in astrology today and back then. So that's one option, Abraxas being a kind of magic word of its own. The other option is we have some Hebrew here. Now, this brings us to the more, perhaps a term we're most familiar with if we've come across the origin of this before, which is I create as I speak. And this also is linked to Aramaic. These are kind of linked languages. And again, it's about words. It's about the word itself. We could theoretically think of the whole idea of the word being quite important in Genesis, if we're looking at creation stories and cosmology, and about creating things, right? Witches create change. And so words itself are really kind of the key to that, right? So those are some potential origins. It's difficult to know what the true one is, but what we do have is some evidence of when it was first used, which is 2nd century AD. And we have a little quote from the rather fabulously named Serenus Simonicus, and he said this particular thing around a healing use of abracadabra. It says, on a piece of parchment write the so-called abracadabra several times, repeating it on the line below, but take off the end so that gradually individual letters which you will take away each time are missing from the word. So this means it ends up becoming a sort of cone shape. He specifies that sort of term cone, and it's interesting to note that because he's essentially saying that we're trying to siphon away the sickness, fever of some kind, whatever it might be. And so it becomes like this kind of cone, if you like, shape. And we see that it's sort of diminishing. And it's interesting to note the sort of I create as I speak, because here, as we're removing the words, we're then removing the creation. So you're essentially destroying it, right, by unspeaking in a way, right? My theory also with this is that could we apply it alternatively? Could we potentially, if you like, turn it on its head? And if there was something we want to increase, for example, prosperity, could we write that word and then increase it? It's something that is food for thought. But back to the healing, attestation of this. This was used to be wrapped with or to be wound with linen and hung around the neck. Now, I don't know whether the winding term means that it was wound up, like rolled up and then bound in it and then hung around the neck, whether it was at either corner here or whether it was perhaps put into something else. I'm not sure we really know that, or at least I don't. If you do, let me know in the comments. But that's quite an interesting little talisman to have, and really simple to use, right? The other benefit of this is that modern jewellers have cottoned on to this talisman, and they have used it to make some really beautiful jewellery. So if you're looking for a little charm, obviously you can make one yourself, but you can also get a rather fancy charm made out of silver or whatever. It might be worth even looking into planetary associated metals to see, which metal it is you want this charm made out of, because you could then take on the healing properties of, particular planets, depending on sort of what astrology or cosmology you assign yourself to. So from this point, we then move on to the wonderful say wonderful. I don't know if she is wonderful actually. Ava Remington Taylor. But just the way she's written this is rather wonderful. So she is talking about a voyage, a rather troublesome voyage. And she says, Bainster saith that he healed 200 in 1 year of a plague by hanging abracadabra about their necks. And this is in 1582. So this is quite an interestingly sort of moving forward sort of thing, right? We then go on to the Daniel Defoe quote from 1722. This is our kind of latest terminology from this, or latest attestation. So certain words or figures written on as particularly the word abracadabra formed in triangle or pyramid. Now this really, he noted, was used during a time of plague, and he was also kind of dismissive of the use of it. So yeah, mixed bag, but those are at least our attestations of the word. Onwards from those quotes from a kind of more medicinal perspective, we have a little taste of magic, transcendental magic from Eliphas Levi. And what he says about abracadabra is quite interesting. It's a little theory that he's got here, and he says that this combination of letters is the key of the pentagram, right? And he's got it in the cone shape here. But he mentions that the letter A is repeated in the word 5 times and makes this shape out of it. And I thought that was quite a fascinating take, especially when we consider the pentagram is a tool that is used either to focus spirits or focus, creation and sort of mastery of spirits and of matter in a way, right? We use the pentagram to represent the kind of mind over matter, or spirit over the elements, or the combination of these things, right? And so it's interesting that we should potentially apply abracadabra to that, because we also use the pentagram as protection. We see this mentioned in Claude Le Couteau's work about pentagrams being used on the door to keep fever away. And we know that abracadabra was also used to keep fevers away through the diminishing of its letters. Is that a potential link there? So, we've looked at the historical usage, we've looked at origins, we've looked at applications. How are you going to apply abracadabra when you do the magical thing? Let me know in the comments below, like and subscribe, and until next time, health and wealth.